So hi everybody, welcome to another edition of Indie Authors Live. I'm going to be chatting with Hazel St. who is the author of Courting War, as well as some other upcoming titles, but we're mainly going to talk about Courting War today. We're going to be trying Instagram rather than TikTok. Last week I actually kind of liked it, so we'll kind of see what goes on. So let me see if I can invite Hazel. Go here. Hi,
Hi,
how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. All right, I'm super excited to talk with you today. So obviously I read this like a while ago, like as an ARC. But I just reread it via audiobook and I really,
Oh,
really enjoyed the narrators. So it was really kind of like great to the narrators were wonderful in embodying those characters, but I feel like I get so much more when I listen to audiobook because it's just nice to hear someone listen to you.
yeah.
Listen to somebody.
I would say that 95% of all the books that I read are audio. I mean, that's partially being dyslexic. So yeah, I really enjoy it. That's partially why I wanted to have the audiobook with this one, so much because I just, I love it. So I'm glad you enjoyed it because I really love Christian and Ashley.
Yeah,
So,
they were great. Awesome. So we can just get right into it. So let's start with, I don't know, in the harder question, I don't know. When did you decide that you wanted to be an author and what was your path to publication like?
um, well, that is a hard question. I mean, so when I originally wanted to write a book, it's hard because like as a dyslexic child, like I was told I was not good at writing. I could not write. So honestly, I didn't like. There's a lot of authors who like, "Yeah, since I was five." I was like, yeah, no, never.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was like 17 or 18. I read a book and I was like, ooh, I'd really love to storytell because I've always been a storyteller, but I never thought I could actually tell stories because I didn't have a medium to do it and being bad at writing, blah, 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 blah. So the first book I started, it's the trash, I mean, it's horrible, um, was when I was 17, which would be like a day ago. No, I'm kidding. 15, 16 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But then like in 2016 is when I got serious about publishing. Um, I wrote like 5 books, got an agent, went on submission. That died, broke my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then I wrote a couple more, but well, I wrote a book on submission that was like the hardest book I've ever written. That book is Courting War. Yeah, so then somewhere in between there, like I realized I had a bunch of self-published friends who were like, you should just indie. And I was like, I can't do that. I'm not like good enough for that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like I just didn't feel like I could do it. Um, but then somewhere last year, I was like, you know what? Why are you wasting time? Like, you can publish books, like, you're a good writer, like, you should just do it. So I took a leap of faith and I did. And I started with Courting War primarily because I think it's kind of a standalone, it's kind of not a standalone.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's partially the reason. And then I just really loved the book. So I started there and now I have a lot of other books I've written. So I have to choose what worlds to focus on because
Mm-hmm.
when you're starting out as a traditionally published in that path, you write a lot of book ones and you don't ever get to the sequels because you have to sell your book one before you can write the sequel. So I have a lot of book ones, and so I'm like, okay, where are we gonna go from here? So anyway, that was a long answer to basically be like, so the last like 6, 7 years has I've been treating it very um like a job. So, but I didn't publish until 3 months ago or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's interesting that you kind of had that experience of trying to go trad because obviously, like you said, like you need an agent, you query, like there's so much more stuff that goes into even getting your book like remotely looked at to get published
Hmm.
rather than publishing it yourself. So, it sounds like you're probably much like me in that very like there's that impatience because you absolutely like you put your heart and soul into writing these books and you just want to get it out there for people to enjoy.
Yeah, and I think honestly it was just I'm really a believer in timing though. I do think
Mhm.
things happen in the time that they're supposed to happen. Um, but yeah, I definitely am impatient, although I'm like I'm on year 8. Doesn't feel like I feel like I've gained a lot of patience.
Mhm.
But you know, it's funny because I did go the trad route first. Like the majority of my writer friends are debuting in trad like this year or like 2 years from now or just got agents. And
Mhm.
so it's I feel kind of like alone in a sea of all these authors who are going trad. But yeah, but I don't I would prefer to do it this way because I like writing stories in a way that I don't think traditional publishing is gonna like want until they know it's
Yeah,
popular. So
that's fair. So how do you write? You know, you said mentioned that you've written a lot of different kinds of books. So do you plan? Do you outline? Do you quilt? What do you do in your writing process?
um well I wish I knew. Um No, like every book is different, truly. And I wish like I just had like a machine that was like, okay, I plot and then I write and then I
Hmm.
revise. But like so Courting War was a very plotted book, kind of. I wrote that book first as a screenplay, which is how I wrote a
Oh.
lot of books. And that was kind of just me telling this story, being a pantser, but doing it in a way that wasn't doing like 100,000 words. And I wrote Gilded Wicked Mirrors, which is the book that comes out in August that
Mhm.
way too. But they were very different books. Like Gilded Wicked Mirrors took me 17 days to write the screenplay. Courting War took me 9 months to write it.
Wow.
So, I mean, they are very different. And my process is very different. Some books fly out of me, some are like torture. So yeah, I mean, primarily I am a pantser at heart, but then I force myself to plot, especially in revision. So like if I'm gonna pants a book, I'll let myself do it because if that, like as an ADHD person, I'm like, okay, you gotta let yourself do what your mind wants to do. Um, and then I'm like, okay, well, you did that, and it's a full mess. This is not logical in any fashion. So then I always do like around a 30 to 45 page plot structure revision
Mm.
plan between my first draft and my second. Always. That's the one thing that maintains consistency.
Well, being consistent's good, but I think, I mean, I have ADHD, so I can totally appreciate what you're saying about letting your brain do what it wants. I really, really like that. I like how to describe that. What do you enjoy most about writing in fantasy?
Oh, I mean, I've tried to write in like a contemporary rom-com and I just can't. I'm like I'm like and then magic happened. I'm like, "Oh, okay,
Oh,
that's not
right.
this genre." Um I what I think I like about it the most is escape from reality
Mhm.
because like you you don't it's like you I deal with heavy topics almost
Yeah.
always when I'm writing, but they don't feel as heavy when it's in a magical world. I feel like you get the chance of like distancing yourself, but also just falling in love with this like beautiful world. So to me, that's why I probably always write magic into every book I want to write because I don't want to deal with these heavy topics in like our real world. Like for the book I'm writing right now, my main character, he's going through DV, and I'm like, I can't write a
Mhm.
book like that in our real world. I just can't. So, yeah, but
And heavy topics like in a fantasy world is a very interesting kind of way to go about it because I think I mean we learn like so much about, you know, Theo and this and
mm,
there's I mean there is trauma. You know, I mean some of her most quotable lines are about how she feels about men. That's which I just love.
mhm.
Like female empowerment, let's go, but you know, maybe she has a little bit too much, but that's another story.
Yeah, yeah.
She learns. But I like how you kind of talk about tackling that, and I think that's why a lot of people do read fantasy is to escape, you know.
Yeah.
But then when there are elements of that reality, like you're still able to connect to that character, so
Hmm.
it makes you feel, a, you know, some type of way, a good way though.
Yeah, and I think especially with Theo, like, so full disclosure, like, Theo's hatred of men came from a very real place of mine when I was like 22.
Hmm.
I'd been really hurt by many men. And I, and for a long time I just hated all men. And that was like, you know, just how I lived my life. And then I realized with healing and therapy and all that stuff, like, we don't have to hate all men, which is kind of this story, right?
Yeah.
But then as somebody like I have a degree in therapy. I was a therapist for a while. Like I do take seriously writing these types of stories and these types of things on the page, and I try to do it in a very therapeutic way. Um,
Mm-hmm.
to get somebody from this like I hate men to where she ends up, which is I hate some men, you know.
Hmm. That
But yeah.
That's actually super interesting that, I mean, I'm a therapist full time. So I now, like, even just like hearing you say that, I'm just like, okay, I can definitely see, like you said, writing it in a therapeutic way and
Hmm.
listening to, like I said, like listening to it, just, I don't know, it made it feel like more real and it made it, I don't know. It was a really, really great experience to listen to it too, like, and get it a second time
Mm,
and kind of get to, it's not just like, okay, like here's the story, like this is what's happening, but it's like you really get launched into what that kind of feels like, and like you said, like relating to it, from a place, where like writing yourself through healing
yeah,
too. I mean, do you like Taylor Swift?
I do like Taylor
Have
Swift.
you listened to the new
I
album?
have. I have,
So
yes.
what is it? The Thank You Amy, where she's like, I hate you, but like you healed me. Like that's kind of how
Hmm.
I feel about this.
Hmm. Oh yeah,
Okay, well that's
1000%.
my next post about what song fits this fits a book. It's
Yeah,
that one.
yeah. It's so funny that you're a therapist too, because I try really hard to lean into like the baddie daddies and the shadow daddies, and I am writing
Yeah.
them, but it's hard for me because I'm like, but he's not safe or healthy, you know, like, um, and so like I know that, so I'm like, okay, let's get them to a place where I feel like I can end a relation, like a story in a relationship where it is healthy, because I work with TV
Mhm.
and SA,
Mhm.
clients for the majority of the time that I worked as a therapist, so it's very important to me. But I'm also like, but also shadow daddy's
Right.
fun. Um,
Right. Right.
so yeah, but yeah, but I think that is part of me also working through my own stuff that I
Mhm.
don't even realize I'm doing as an artist on the page, because like it has been pointed out to me that while I was writing Courting War, I was in a very grumpy ass mood. And I didn't connect that either, that I was like, oh, I am writing my mood into this book.
Mm.
So, in the same way that I think Taylor does a lot of her
Yeah.
writing on her albums.
Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful thing. And so what do you need in your writing space to stay focused? What keeps you on task? I
Again,
selfishly asked this question for myself.
I genuinely wish that I knew.
Hmm.
Like, there are things that I'm like, yeah, with the ADHD brain, I'm like, well, I have to have that or I can't write.
Yep.
And that's usually like a tea. I wish it was a coffee, but I can't drink coffee very much anymore, because of my physical issues.
Hmm.
But it's like always a drink, or if you ask my boss, it's 7 drinks because I they call me a drink
Yes.
goblin.
You need all of them.
Um, and strangely enough, another thing that's just really weird is darkness. I need dark. I need a dark space. Um, and I think it's because it's like a quietness that comes with darkness that has always just, I don't know, like filled my soul. But we also joke that like I hate the sun. Like I legit hate the
Hmm.
sun. So that maybe that's why I write a bunch of vampires, which I know we didn't see in this book, but we're gonna see a bunch coming out in my next books. Because Devereaux in Courting War is a vampire. So we get a baddie vampire daddy in Light's books. But yeah, so I I don't know, like that is so stupid. I need darkness and drinks.
I mean, that sounds good to me. I mean, clearly I like darkness as well. Like I literally sit in the dark like all the time, and like even like when like the motion lights will go off, I'll just be sitting there and then people walk in and they'll be like, "Oh, like sorry. I'm
Same
just
thing.
clearly not moving. I'm just here."
I'm at my my work right now because my internet at home just is dead, and so I was like, okay, I can't do this there. And I'm in the space that I work, and usually it's just dark, and there's just like this one window here, but it's never in direct sunlight. So
Mm-hmm.
people like get scared every time they walk in there, like, oh my God, you're here. And I was like,
Yep.
yeah, I am. Sorry, I'm a creature of the night. What can I say?
And what's your kryptonite as a writer? What gets in your way?
Of writing,
Yeah.
everything. Um, uh, well, the ADHD for
Yeah.
sure. It's so one of the other things about the question before, I usually have to trick myself into a hyper focus, and I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that the other thing is I do write with headphones in and
Mm-hmm.
with the music like way too loud. Um, because then I can just like really zone in. But the kryptonite 1000% is social media and friends who are constantly DMing me in group chats. And I will take any excuse not to write,
Mm-hmm.
legitimately. I don't know how I get books written at this point. Um, so yeah, that the friends. Let's get rid of them all.
I can definitely relate to that. I think there was someone, another author, I think it was Claire Sager. She has this app, it's called Forest, and I
Oh,
guess like, have you heard of
yeah,
it?
I've used it.
I
I used it.
Does it
Yeah.
work?
It it does and it doesn't because there are those of us who cheat.
Yes.
Um, you know. So
Yes.
it does. I find that my hardest thing in the world is I love a sprint, but nobody
Hmm.
wants to do the types of sprints that I want to do because I love like group working and we'll go on Zoom and we'll group work. But I want to start a sprint and in 3 hours check in.
Yeah.
Like, because if I get in a hyper focus, I could go 8 hours without realizing that I haven't eaten food or gone to the bathroom.
Hmm.
And if I get interrupted in that state, then I have to do all the work to redo it to get into that focus. And I think Brandon Sanderson once said that too. Like if he gets interrupted, it takes his entire process to go back to work. And
Hmm.
I'm not that bad, but it feels like it, where it's like, ugh, I don't want to do a 20-minute sprint because I need a 7-hour sprint.
Hmm.
Um, which I can do. Like I was just finishing my last revision on Gilded Wicked last week, and I think I had maybe like 10-hour sprint in there at one point where I was like, "Oh, it's been 10 hours. You should feed yourself." ADHD
Love
is a
time
problem.
blindness. It's a
Seriously.
problem. But I think it's also, I mean, I think I've said this in many interviews before. I think a majority of the authors I've interviewed all have ADHD, and they're all female. And so we know that ADHD in females is severely underdiagnosed,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. But I think it's like I look at it as a superpower, in a way. And like I listen to audiobooks on 2.5 speed. Like, I can read a 500-page book in an hour if I want to. And like at work, like I'm very good at signing notes because I like my eyes just move fast. I can't slow down. And
My auditory
people are,
does.
yeah, people are
I
like, how do you do that? I'm like, I don't know, I just do. But like I'm clearly reading it because I'm clearly understanding what's going on and like what's in the note or with the book. But I
Yeah.
don't know.
I can't read fast because of the dyslexia, but
Yep.
I listen so fast. I listen at
Yep.
3x and people are like, "How are you hearing that?" And I've heard like narrators get upset by that. I was like, "I hear it the way that you guys hear it. I truly
Yeah.
do. I hear all of the acting." And in fact, when I was auditioning the actors for Courting War, I had to listen at 1x and I
Oh
cannot
my
tell you
god,
how
drives
painful that was. It
drives me
was
nuts.
so painful. And I literally had to, I couldn't make a decision without going and finding another book that they had narrated and turning it up to as fast as I
Mm-hmm.
listen to be like, okay, like how do you actually sound to me? But yeah, I've also, to your point, like as a superpower, like I do not forget anything I find interesting. So like
Mm-hmm.
I am a walking calendar and like just memory machine. But then I can't put my clothes away. So it's,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
It's so like and my husband like gets so mad at me because we have like our spare room and he's like we need to go through. I'm like I literally don't want to. I'd rather just sit here for like 5 hours and just read a book. Like I
yeah.
don't want to do that. Like I want to do something I want to do.
I
He's like, I
genuinely
don't care. You can
don't.
just sit there.
I genuinely don't know that I have the skill set to clean. Like
Mm-hmm.
genuinely. I have one of my best friends. He is obsessed with cleaning, and I just spent the week at his house, like not last week, but a week and a half ago, and he's just always cleaning, and I was like, I don't understand, like I just don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
We are such opposite humans. Like he drives me nuts with his cleaning, and I drive him nuts with how I just leave everything everywhere. And he was telling our mutual friend who was with us, he's like, she just literally leaves everything everywhere, huh? And then my friend goes, yeah, she has ADHD. Like she doesn't. And I always complain, I'm like, where's my stuff? Where's my stuff, Joseph? Because he moves it. And I'm like, but I knew where it was.
That is so funny. Oh, that is so funny. Okay, so let's move on to talking about Courting War.
Yeah.
Here's the book again. I am going to take the jacket off because it's just so pretty underneath
Oh,
of it
yeah,
as
that one.
well. And then we also have the lovely edges that you
I
did.
love that.
And we
Yeah.
also have some
I will
splatter as
never do that
well.
again.
It looks so overwhelming and so
Speaking
stressful.
of ADHD, like shiny ideas and
Yeah, you're
hyper
like, oh, that'd be
focus.
a good idea. It was a good idea
Never
because I
again.
love having it, but
I'm actually really I'm actually really happy that like my first readers will have that.
yeah,
Like genuinely. Like the first, I think there's like around 100 of them out there in the world, and that makes me so happy because like there will be a day where like hopefully I have more success, but like I genuinely remember these first readers and like care so deeply about them. So I'm like, do I hate that I did it? Was it torture? Yes, but I'm also like very happy I did do it.
yeah. Well, I think that it's rewarding, like you said, to kind of know that like you have these readers. And so for those who have not read your book, if you had to describe Courting War in one sentence, what would that sentence be?
Gosh, um, Lady Daddy. No, that's two words. Sorry. Um, a a female main character like Hades has to team up with Hercules to fight in a deadly tournament put on by the gods. That's how I would put it.
Love it. It works for me. It definitely works for me. Um, and this is the hardest question that authors tell me because you're choosing between one of your children.
It's
But
easy
if you had to pick a
for
favorite
me. It's
character,
Haven. It's Haven.
okay, there you go.
It's
Why?
it's so easy. Um, no, it's actually it's funny. I this is maybe I'm weird, but this is always the easiest. I never will choose a POV character because I'm just too much in their heads. And because I come from a background of acting and therapy, like I am like in their heads. And I'm like, okay, this is claustrophobic. I don't want to be there. Um, but Haven is just like, well, you've read the book. She
Yeah.
is like the boss. She is the shadow daddy of the book. She's just like 5, 10 steps ahead of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of in some ways the nicest character too. Like it's very weird. Like she's manipulative and awful, but also like deeply cares about people. Um, and what I like about writing her is that I never quite know what she's gonna do, especially in like a
Mm-hmm.
first draft. Obviously, when I'm revising, I know exactly what she's gonna do, and so there's something fun and fascinating about um, a character like that. And in the same way, I like writing Gallagher because I never quite
Yeah.
know what they're gonna do.
I think that that's probably one of like the coolest things ever. I love hearing authors describe that like I don't know what they're gonna do because like as you're writing it, like you're figuring it out, and I think that that's such a cool like
Hmm.
element to kind of have to your writing and telling your story.
Honestly, I can't tell you what any of the characters are gonna do. Um, like I have tent poles where I'm like, okay, you have to be here and
Mm-hmm.
you have to be here and you have to be here, but they always surprise me.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a good enough surprise, I'll let them keep it. So,
And so, what's the most challenging part of writing Courting War? Because you said that this took you 9 months versus 17 days. That's a pretty significant difference. So, what was harder about writing Courting War?
yeah, and that's a first draft only. And
Mm-hmm.
usually ugh, I'll spend about 4 or 5 months in revision too. So, um, in total, this book like took me a year and a half to write. Um, but I think honestly, it has to do with my emotional state writing it.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a good writer with being tortured. Like I'm not. Taylor Swift writes 31 songs.
Yeah.
slow down. Like
Mhm.
but I wrote the book on submission, and that was really difficult because you have all of this rejection coming back, or you're hearing nothing. And
Mm.
then the rejections coming back were like, I love this concept. It's so fresh, unique, and interesting, but we just don't like you. And I'm like, great. So do I suck at writing? And I think it gets into your head. Like these types
Yeah,
of things get into your head, which is why I think it's so important that authors don't look at their reviews. I mean, it's
agreed.
impossible not to see them, but it's important not to, because you what really matters is what you think about your stories and your worlds and your writing. And if you're okay with where you're at, you can always grow, but like you don't need other people to tell you you suck at prose or whatever. Um and so I mentioned that because that is the number one thing that comes up, that I'm just like, can we shut up about it? But yeah,
Hmm.
and it's it's not for reviews necessarily. It's like just people like, there's the one thing that I'm insecure about because I'm dyslexic, that I think is the easiest thing to for somebody else to say something about, and then I can't write for 2 months. Um,
Hmm.
so that I I went off on an ADHD tangent there, but I think the main thing is that I was writing with the most insecurities I'd ever had as a writer, and then the book that followed that, which is Wolfsbane, uh, just kind of those both of those books in combination, I was writing with such intense insecurities that like I it was hard to function as
Hmm.
a writer, because and the thing is I just got a revision back on Gilded Wicked, which is the book that was dying on submission while I was writing Courting War, from an editor who rejected me. And she didn't say it because I don't think she ever would have said it, but she was like, yeah, I really love this book, like it's so good. Like she was like, truly it's so good. And I was like, yeah, I know. So just, you could have bought it 2 years ago, but whatever. um so anyway, long story short, that's why it's only painful or hard when when I'm insecure. Um,
Mm.
and I'm not going to say anything can do that because I'm a pretty stable person now in my 30s, but um, there are places that, your friends or people who are close to you, they just know that they can say something about, and then it's going to hurt you. And I
Yep.
had a person who I thought was a friend really hurt me. Well, I would say harm me, honestly.
Mm.
Um, Last year when I was writing, and I could not finish a book. I did not finish a book last year. And that I've since been able to come back from that, but I had to take 8 months off from writing. And that's how bad it can get. So again, that's just another like pitch for not reading reviews. But reviews don't hurt me as much as friends can.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, friends, obviously they know you on a different level. It's different. But like speaking to reviews, like reviews are so like I love arc reading and beta reading, and like I love doing that sort of thing, but
Hmm.
I find it always so difficult to review because just because a book isn't for me doesn't mean that it's not for somebody else. And so, I've struggled, like especially since getting into the indie author space, where like you're filling out Google Forms, and like it's not because I just did NetGalley before because I
Yeah.
just knew about trad. But now, it's like just because I give a book like that's why I got rid of my star ratings, because I feel like 3 stars has such a negative connotation. And it's really hard to get 4 or 5 stars for me, really
Yeah.
hard.
Me too, honestly. Like I think
And
as
I'm
an
not being
author,
mean. I'm
no.
just it's
I
okay. It's a good book and I would tell people to read it. It's just I don't love it. And like it's hard to get me to love something because I think the ADHD,
oh,
it's I'm all or nothing, and that's how I feel about this book, but
me too though. Like honestly, and here's what I'll say about reviews, because I have unfortunately seen some. Some were just like on accident. Sometimes you just hate yourself.
Mhm.
But here's what I will say. I actually appreciate 1 stars, 2 stars, and 3 stars on my own books. And here's why. That means your book is being read by people. It
Mhm.
means they're having feelings. It means that they're
Mhm.
stroking up some feelings in you. And there are things that like as a writer, I'll be like, okay, like you didn't finish the book clearly, or like whatever, but it's not my business anymore, whether somebody likes my books or not, especially in a review space. I mean, in a critique space, it's different.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, some of my favorites are the lower stars on Courting War. Like I love there's a couple that I love that I'm not gonna mention because I don't want
Yeah.
to point them out, but there's just like I think about them and it just brings me joy. Like it shouldn't, but it does.
No, but I'm like, I think it's good that you can laugh about those things,
Yeah.
and not like not take it too seriously,
Well, and no
in
one
some
should
ways.
really, if they're taking it too seriously, it's like they need to step back,
Yeah.
because the goal, like honestly, the true goal that a writer should have is to have 100,000 stars,
Hmm.
like, because then that means you're Sarah J. Maas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean,
So,
very true. Very
so
true.
I'll take as many 1 stars as people want to give me. Is I mean, I don't want to be like review bombed, but like,
Right.
um, but yeah, I mean, I personally don't want to read them, but they serve such an important purpose. But I'm the
I
same
like
way.
that you
Like
said that.
as a reader, it is so hard for me to give a 5 star.
Yeah.
And
And it's just that's like the most frustrating thing is because like I've had, and like I said, I won't mention them either, but like I've had a few authors come back and say, well, like what made it 3 stars? Like what could I have done better or differently? And I say to them, I'm like, listen, there's nothing that you could have done better or differently. It just like it's really hard to get 4 or 5 for me.
mhm,
This means I enjoyed the book and I liked it, and I'm going to be putting I put every book on my social media, whether it's a 1 star or not, because if I arc read it, because it may
mhm,
be for somebody else. But that's like the like most difficult question for me to answer, because I'm just like sometimes like I can't necessarily verbalize what it is. Like I don't know, it's a feeling. It's a feeling like what did I read? Right now I'm reading The City of Dust by Tara Sim, and
mm,
I love Tara Sim. I read Timekeeper, and I love that. And this is her first adult novel, and there's just something about it. I am just in love
mm.
with it. I don't know what it is. Um, and so but it's hard for me to verbalize sometimes. And I think that that's like very difficult for me as a reviewer, because for me, arcs aren't necessarily about feedback in
No,
that
they're
manner.
not.
Beta reading is what that's for. And that's why I like beta as well.
Well, I've never asked an ARC reader for like why they've given me a review. That's a weird thing to hear, actually, that people do
Hmm.
that. But maybe that's because, and I don't know, maybe it's because I've been in the industry for so long. Like, yes, this is my first book, but I've been
Yeah.
around, where I just like, I let readers have what they want to have. And if somebody tags me in something that is negative, like that's not a blessing. And I want no one to do
Right.
that. Um, but like I would never go and be like, but why? I mean, it's so funny because like I I think at my core, I'm like, I think Courting War has way more 4 stars than 5 stars, and I'm like, yeah, I get it. Like I understand
Hmm.
why. Like I don't need to go ask why. To me, it's also not my strongest book, so I shouldn't go around saying that, but it's not. Like so, I'm over here like I get it. So I don't I and I think also I just have really healthy relationships with people who tell me the truth
Hmm.
about my books, and as much as I don't want to hear things, I'm like, okay, yeah, yeah, that's true, that's weak, and there's certain things with Courting More where I was just like, I agree that that could be better, and I'm still gonna publish it this way.
Hmm.
So I mean, to me, like, and I just think that's a losing battle too, because as a writer, right? Because everyone's gonna have an opinion and have a different reaction based off of their own life and circumstances and subjectivity that like you're never going to be able to predict. I mean, the fact that like 90% of people love Theo was shocking to me because she is a villain. I mean, she's like,
Hmm.
she's awful. But then like I think she speaks to people. And so
Yeah.
and then it's funny because like people didn't like Kellen as much and I'm like I also get that. So it's like I don't know. I think that you're just never gonna win any sort of anything by I think trying to get feedback during that stage. It's just gonna make
Hmm.
you feel bad because you already have a book out there in the world. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
I don't know.
No, I
I'll stop
totally
talking about
agree.
it, but
No, no, and I I mean, that's why I brought it up. I appreciate the conversation because I think, I think that that also kind of makes me look at myself as a reviewer and I'm like, shit, like, am I an asshole? Like, am I, like, you know what I'm
No,
saying? But so just like you guys kind of feel that way when you see those kind of reviews and stuff, I feel that way as well sometimes because I'm like, I could give it 4 stars, but I'm like, I need to stay true to myself, you know?
they'll here's the thing. There'll never be a review that can hurt me unless I let it. And then
Yeah.
the other thing is like again, like I don't think reviews are where you need to be looking, A,
Mm-hmm.
but B, like you get to have your opinion about my work. Just like I think that like Taylor Swift's last three albums are not my favorites. Like
Agreed.
I love Reputation and I love Red. Like and it doesn't make me like Taylor less,
Right.
you know? So I mean, I think review how you want to review, and authors need to stay away from that. But
Mhm.
obviously, don't at mention somebody
Right.
if you're going to be like, I hate this author. They suck. I can't believe I
Right.
finished this book.
That's not
Like,
kind.
don't do that.
Right.
But
um.
you can say that. You
Right.
can say all of those things,
But just don't
and
tag them.
yeah.
I still can't believe some people tag people in bad reviews. But anyway,
I've been fairly
I.
lucky so far, but yeah, there's been a couple I'm like, I didn't need to see that. I didn't though.
But we digress, and but I think it's an important conversation, and it's a bigger conversation that I think that needs to be had. Um, but if you had to choose a quote from this book that would be your favorite, what would that be?
Oh gosh, I don't have it in front of me. I wish I was at my house. It's definitely one by Thea, and I think it's just a mood. I'm not going to quote it perfectly, but it's I don't like you, and people I don't like usually end up dead. Something around those lines. She's saying it to Kellen's dad, I
Yes.
think, in that part of the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't like his dad either, so felt right.
Yeah, like you said, mood. And so, I know that you have some beautiful art. I actually have one that is framed right here. I don't know. It's
I
like
love
I
that.
have this one and I have
My
the
fa-
other one as
that's
well.
me and Julia, the artist's favorite like
It's
piece.
it's just it's beautiful. I just love it.
That scene
Um,
also is my favorite scene I may have ever
yeah.
written in my life.
So I mean, I know that we have art, which is wonderful, but are there any like actors or actresses that you picture as Theo and Kellen?
This one's really hard for me to answer. Like this is the one that I find is really
Yeah.
hard for me to answer as a writer because I also have, 15 years of experience as an actor, so there's
Yep.
always like, well, me every single role. No, I'm just kidding. I don't self-insert, but I do write characters that I would want to play as an actor.
Hmm.
And that's I think like I left acting, and I think that's how I keep that spirit alive. But I did write with in mind like um, Theo always had Ava Green vibes to me,
Yes.
like especially like what's that? What's the one where it's the magical one she did? There was many.
Um,
Um,
Miss Peregrine's.
no, the other one. It's the TV show with the dude from Pearl Harbor. Wow.
Uh, I
Um,
know what you're talking about too.
it's
Like
like
I've seen them. I've
Penny
seen the show.
Dreadful. Penny Dreadful.
Penny Dreadful. Yes.
So those vibes. And then Kellen, I don't know, somebody really tall and really muscular. Like if The Rock weren't so old, I think he would be really good. I don't know that he'd be good at acting it, but like I mean, he looks like
That's the vibe.
Hercules.
Yeah.
So whoever looks like Hercules. Um, Haven. Oh well, okay. So Nephilim, I always had in mind. Angelica Houston's character from Ever After
Hmm.
was always Nephilim for me. And then Haven and Andromache are harder for me to cast because they would have to look identical. So just I guess Ava Green in just three different
In
roles,
three different roles. I
which
love
she
that.
could pull off. So
Yeah.
yeah, and then I always saw Cecile as Lily um God, what's her name? James, I think.
Lily
Yeah.
James. Yep.
No, did I do that wrong?
Lily
I'm doing this wrong.
Collins.
No, no, I think it is Lily James.
Lily James. The
Let me just
one
look at
who she was not
Cinderella.
Cinderella. Was she
Yeah,
Cinderella? Yes.
Cinderella. Yeah, yeah, Lily James.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, I think that's it.
That's
I would say
awesome.
I kind of see Emmett as the Duke from Bridgerton,
Mm-hmm.
Regé
Mm-hmm.
Page. All right, I think I've said enough.
We have so many fan casts, and I just like that because I just think it's like I like to have that in my mind when I read. So
Mm.
we'll see. So let's end the interview with just some fun questions and fun stuff. So other than reading and writing, what are things that you enjoy doing in your free time?
Well, I paint. That's pretty
Painting.
obvious. I design too, so the naked cover is all of my designs.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
I put it
So that,
upside down. Smart Taylor.
yeah,
That's
so
so beautiful.
I
Oh,
designed that. Um, and I think too, I'm gonna design the Gilded Wicked ones as well. Um, so yeah, so there's a lot of that I do. Paint is that type of thing for me is more self-care though. Like,
yeah.
so I try not to force it. So that's why I'm like, maybe I'll do it. Depends on if it's self-care or self-hate, you know. Um, like the edges became self-hate. I still love
Mine
them.
says war.
Yeah, I
What do
love
they
the
say?
edges.
They don't just say war though, right?
They say war.
And
Um,
isn't there a different thing?
they're so some of them have peace on the
Yeah.
bottom. Some of them have
Yes.
war and peace.
Yeah.
And then the bottoms always were very different. But almost all of them say war on the top.
So pretty.
Um, and then I always sing. That's another thing I do.
Cool.
Uh, Other than that, I'm pretty boring. Those are the main things that I do outside of writing when I have time.
And this is my favorite question because I get so many great recommendations. So, what recommendations for books do you have?
Yeah, well, I have a couple that are coming
Oh,
out,
yeah.
so they have not been published yet. So one of them is my newest obsession, and that is Born of Blood and Shadows by Jamie Smith. It's her debut indie, and it's coming out September 3rd. And
Okay.
it has baddie daddy vibes. It has like it has like a love triangle that you don't know who you want to root for, to the point where I'm like,
Ooh.
could you just write a reverse harem? Like, why do we have to choose here?
Yeah, why choose? We don't
I
need
don't
it.
feel like we have to choose. Um, and it's Faye, and it's really such a fun story. It also has a lady daddy. It's more of like it's like a Jude arc where, she
Hmm.
starts off like not having a lot of power and then grows into it. And so, I wrote Theo. I love a good, lady daddy. So, that's my newest obsession. It comes out in September. And then, I think this one comes out in December. But A Cruel Thirst by Angela Montoya. That's trad, but she's doing vampires, Latina vampires, and I'm like so into it.
Ooh,
It's very like Zorro meets like Vampire Diaries, and I'm
that's
just
cool.
like obsessed with it. And then something that just came out recently, I'm reading it right now, and I'm just really a big fan of Amanda Aggie. So that's Fated Vow.
Yes,
That came out like two
loved
weeks ago,
Faded
I think.
Vow. Hmm.
So those are my most recent on top of mind books.
I love it. I love it. Um, and let's see. My ADHD is forgetting all the other questions. Okay,
Well,
so we
me too.
talked about, oh, if you had to give advice to a younger you or an aspiring author, what would that advice be?
Um, well, I have so many things. I actually will start with advice I should take right now, and that is look at your own page. Like truly, it 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 it's so easy to compare, your journey as a baby writer, or, I don't feel like a baby writer, but I am like a baby published writer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so easy to be like, well, I'm not successful because I only sold blah, blah, blah. And my friends have to be like, can you please shut up, Hazel? Because like you're like doing so much better than other people. I'm like, yeah, right. Okay, I'll shut up. Yeah. So, but it's so easy to compare.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the one thing is like look at your own page and focus on truly, and this is the number one piece of advice I will say throughout every journey or every thing you go through as a writer, you need to focus on why you love writing and always turn back to that. Like turn back to like why are you a storyteller? Why are you doing this? Because there are so many parts of this journey, whether you're doing indie or trad, where it can be soul sucking and hard and it sucks. And I mean, if you look at threads any day, it's like everyone's like, indie's hard, trad's hard. I'm like, everything
Mm-hmm.
is hard.
Everything's hard.
So let's remember why we do it and the love of it. But specifically for an early writer, two things: patience, which I've never been good at, and craft. I think if you're on your first book, craft, 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 because you don't want to publish a book before like it's ready, because then, you know, like it's hard to get reviews at a level where I know I'm really good at craft. If I had published my first book ever, I don't even want to know what the reception would
Mm-hmm.
have been. It would have been so bad. I mean, the character started waking up and looking in a mirror, so you can imagine it was
Mm-hmm.
great. It was a great book. So that's really the two things: is focus on craft and know that there is a timing for things. Like I hate saying that because that takes out agency in some ways, but there's so much luck and timing to writing and being successful at writing that like if people said that wasn't, they'd be lying to you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I've just experienced that from like my own friends. Like I I have around 10 of my friends that I have mentored or have critiqued that have passed me in this industry at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So like they have agents and book deals and things like that, all things that I thought I coveted and wanted. Um and it's like that's their timing. It's not my timing. It gets back I think it gets back to literally eyes on your own paper, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And it's not a competition,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Like it truly is not a competition. Anyway, I'll shut up.
Good. No, I think it's good. It's good advice. I mean, I'm trying to write my book. I think I'm just gonna put it off until NaNoWriMo, and then I'm just gonna bang it out in a month. I think I'm just gonna do that. But it's good. I mean, obviously, I have Greek mythology in it. But because that's just my thing. I will read any and every book that has it. But I think it's good advice. Keep your eyes like on your own paper, and I like the craft piece. I think that like I think that's why I stopped writing is because I was like, okay, like let me read some books about
Mm-hmm.
writing
Mm-hmm.
because I can read, but I don't think I mean I can write and I can read, but I don't know how to kind of like write for a reader, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Well, the other thing,
So I've been trying to read like editing books and you know so I take pieces from each, but some of them are just very outdated, but I try.
yes. I think the other thing, just me speaking to you in this moment, you can use your reading of books as a way to look at and work on craft. So
Mm,
one of the things I did early on because again, I was dyslexic, so I knew I sucked at prose. I knew I have a neurodiverse brain. So any story I say or I tell, here's how I tell a story. A. Okay, we usually start at A. 9, Q,
mhm,
Z, B, Q, B. Like I literally can't write in a
mhm,
linear fashion. And 90% of my job is to take the neurodiverse brain and try to translate that to a way that non-neurodiverse people can understand.
mhm,
And this is why my agent and I really didn't have a good working relationship, is because we didn't know how to work with each other in terms of editorial fashion, which I've found much better relationships with editors that I've now hired. Because there's just times where you just don't align with an
mhm,
editor, and it's just, there's nothing you can do about that. Um, so what I will say is like what I used to do is I used to literally read in an ebook and like highlight. And then I would be
Hmm.
like, when I was trying to learn prose and prose balance, which I know I have a very specific style, but like when I was trying to learn prose, I would like highlight, okay, this is a description pro. This is like an emotional pro. This is there's like six of them, which I can DM you, but like I started reading and listening to audiobooks at the same time and like really picking apart like line by line level because that's what I had to work on. And then also story like chat scene by scene, chapter by chapter, like what is the writer doing here?
Mm.
And that way like you can still read for fun because you don't have to put a lot of energy into it. You can still read for fun and also work on craft at the same time. And so I
Mm.
think during the years that I did that, I read like 150 books every year just looking at prose. Now I read like maybe 50 if I'm lucky. But like,
Mhm.
so anyway, that was just me. I just love talking craft. So anytime you want to talk craft with me, DM me.
No,
It's one of my favorite things.
definitely. No, and
I
I agree.
love, I love, love, love teaching and writing and craft.
And I think, like, I also, like you said, it's not a competition. I just find indie authors just support each other so much, and they do offer like chapter trades and things like that. And it's like I want to help your book succeed, and I want to help yours, and it just feels like I don't know, it just feels like a different beast and a good one.
Hmm.
So I do appreciate your advice because it's tough, and I think I mean you probably more than anybody understand how my brain works because it's hard.
Well, and it's
I did see,
funny, I get why you would want to just save it for Nano because there is a
yeah,
part that it's like, you know, we both know procrastination station is a thing. And so if you force yourself into that time period, is actually easier. I, for the last like 5 years, I haven't been able to do Nano because of revisions and
mhm,
stuff, but I love Nano. Like, I wish I could have Nano every month, honestly.
yeah. Um, so I think that's what I'm gonna do. I think that's what I'm gonna do. We do have a question that I don't know if you want to answer it or not. Someone said, "How did you guys feel about Readers Take Denver?" I don't have threads. I don't necessarily know what happened. I can just say from my experience, I went to BookCon in New York City when it was open. It closed and it stopped being a convention because it was so grossly disorganized. It it was not fun. You were basically fighting other people for books and arcs and things like that. It was not an organized event, so I can say I can't comment on that because I didn't go to that this weekend, but all I can say is I've been to book conventions that have been a mess
Mm.
and they're not fun. And it takes a lot to put on a book event. So
Yeah.
I don't know what that's like. So,
I think maybe because we're both kind of therapists. I have a lot of like a lot of empathy for those who did put it on because I
hmm
cannot imagine how hard that is. And then that's all of the backlash. There's a part of me that like really feels for them and all of the volunteers. But then they're like the level of disorganization, it isn't okay. And there were
right,
things that happened that like should never happen. Like if you pay for a book, you should get a book,
right.
But again, like to what Tay is saying, like I also I didn't go, I don't have experience with the people who put on the event. I can't speak to them personally, or even that event personally, other than I heard that there were certain sectors of it from friends who did go that ran smoothly, and then there were big parts of it
hmm
that were really a big mess. And so that's unfortunate for honestly, it's unfortunate for the readers. It
Yeah.
sucks as a writer, um, and all of the things that happened from the author perspective, like that sucks. But I always feel like when it starts affecting the readers, that's when I'm like, okay,
hmm
that's not okay.
Totally. And that's all we're going to say about that.
Hmm.
I mean, obviously, this is a fictional world, but, there's Greek vibes and Greek
Hmm.
influences. What's the name of the Amazonian island in Wonder Woman?
Oh God.
Because that's what I was.
It's
picturing?
no, I know what it is.
It's that
It's
it's not the mascara, right?
no, I think it
Is it?
is the mascara. Yeah, well that's the women. That's the like
Yeah. Yeah.
the group.
Well,
Yeah.
whatever the island is, that's kind of that's how I pictured, like that's where the games are, like that's
Mm.
what I pictured. But is there anywhere that inspired you, like other than like just general Greece, or is there any other areas that you travel to or want to travel to that inspired your world?
The specific world, I need to go to Greece. Oh my
Me
God, I've
too.
never gone. But I've been obsessed with Greek mythology since I was 11.
Mm-hmm.
I think a part of the reason that war was the first god I wrote is just inevitable because like Athena was the first goddess or first even woman character where I was like, I see myself in you,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of bad because there are a lot of myths of Athena where she ain't the
Yeah,
best, you know?
she's.
Um, but
It
I see that
depends on
too
the day.
because being a human, like we're not always the best, right? But I love that Athena is unapologetically
Sure.
powerful
Mm-hmm.
and in the most sexist way possible. Um, you know, she would have overthrown Zeus if she was a man. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like that's the most sexist part of her story, but like that's how powerful she is. And I've always related to that. So I've always wanted to go to Greece and I've never done it. I don't think I've ever gone on a research trip specifically for a book. But I have gone on trips and been very inspired
Yeah.
to write. Um, so specifically going to Edinburgh in Scotland is like it's just such a magical city. Like I can understand why Who We Don't Talk About
Yes.
Anymore wrote that thing we don't talk
Yes.
about anymore there. Um, and uh so I love that city. And then when I went to Paris and Versailles, like I
Oh,
mean, I'm just like a fancy little bitch.
I
So
love
I
Paris.
love
I love
Paris and
France.
Versailles.
I just love
And
everything.
I'm a huge fan of Phantom of the Opera, so getting to see the Opera House and
Yes.
if you read Gilded Wicked and even Will Spain, so many of my books are very much based on like the Moulin
I
Rouge
love
and
that.
like the opera and like you know that big fancy beautiful like gala-esque sort of society. Um, and so going to Paris, you know, honestly, actually, now that I think about it, not intentionally so, but I did write Gilded Wicked Mirrors almost right after I got back from going to Paris.
Hmm.
And I'm sure there are reasons for that. Because like there's an entire club in Gilded Wicked that is called the Viridian, which is like literally the Moulin Rouge. And
Yeah.
then of course the Opera House exists as more of like a ballet, and then the Opera House exists as an opera. And I'm always playing with Phantom-esque characters. So, yeah, I mean, that for sure is a trip that clearly has really inspired me. And just, I don't know, there's just everything about Paris is just so big and
Mm-hmm.
so beautiful and
Mm-hmm.
like elegant. But yeah, so that for sure. Um, Not that I went there with the intention of
Right.
trying to learn
It just
anything about
happened.
this book. Yeah. But now I think about it, I'm like, oh, yeah, that makes sense
Makes
that you wrote
sense.
that. Yeah, and I honestly, I know we're talking about courting more, but Gilded Wicked Mirrors is like the book of my heart. It's like I love it so much. And the world is just this beautiful, glittering like trophy like Paris is, but it's also like this rotten, like horrible like thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of feel like that's also kind of what Paris
I
is.
mean,
So,
some parts of it, yes.
so there's like it's beautiful, but there's like not great. I think that's with every city, but there's like not great
Yeah,
parts of it. So, yeah. Anyway, I over answer your questions all the time.
that's
Haha,
okay.
hashtag
That's okay.
ADHD.
um, okay, and so I guess the last question is, do you have any signings or anything fun coming up?
You know, I haven't uh I haven't really tried to sign up for any of the sort of conventions
Yeah.
like Reader's Take Denver or anything. I just feel like I'm so new that like I know that you sell books and stuff there, but I'm just like I don't really want to go until like I have people who would be excited to come up to my
Mhm.
table, I guess. And
I
so
would.
not that I'm sure there are people, but I just haven't wanted to go and I probably won't go for like the next 2 years because I really want to focus on writing.
Yeah.
But I do have, so for Gilded Wicked, we're doing a launch event again at a seat at the table books, and that's up close to Sacramento. And so I'll be there. And I will actually be at the Romanticy-Con down in Orlando
Me too.
but I'll be going just as like a normal person,
Cool.
but I'll be there.
Cool.
So if you want me to sign something, I'll be there.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Um, all right, so we have Courting War that's out now, then Gilded Wicked Mirrors, you said August?
Yeah, August 6th.
And
So
then Courting War or Vicious Gods 2, do we have anything set in stone for any of your other upcoming books,
no.
including that one?
The answer is no. I have announced what the next two will be. Well, I've announced like the next five, but I'm only going to say the next two here. That will be Light's books. So it's like chapter 16
Mm-hmm.
um is where that book, you know, we get to know a little bit about Light and Devereaux. Those will be the next two books. So it's a duology-ish. It's actually a trilogy, but the third book is where like the epilogue on this one, the third book takes place right after the
Got it.
epilogue of Courting War, and everyone's back. So, and that's what I was talking about earlier, where I'm like, Trad probably doesn't like the way that I
Mm-hmm.
write books, because the way that this series goes is War, Light, Light, everyone's back in the, well, War, Light, Light, Death, everyone's back in the sequel. So,
Mm.
um, yeah, so that, but I don't have dates for that yet because that book has been a little brat and hasn't been as flowing as the other things I'm working on. So, and trust me though, I promise you, because Courting War has a kind of solid, you know, we can sit here for a while. The end of Gilded Wicked, it's not like that. So I trust me when I say you'd rather me be writing that sequel than writing. I am so I should say I'm working on four books at once, and they
Oh,
all
wow.
are in progress, and we are going forward with all four of them. So Light one and two are being drafted, and then Gilded Wicked things, but I haven't announced those yet. So
Well, I'm
um,
super excited to read really anything that you come up with. I mean, this definitely just like knocked it out of the park for me, Hazel. Thank you for writing it, and I definitely can see you writing like a Medusa something because I want to know. Like now, like I never knew that about Medusa, like what happened to her. So
mm,
I didn't really know
mhm.
about that.
Oh, her
Obviously,
story
because
is so
I'm watching
awful.
Percy Jackson, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't, you just know that she's kind of that she's a bitch in that.
Well,
Like,
do you want to know
so
the actual myth of Medusa? It's awful. It's
no, it is
legit
awful.
horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to write Medusa, but that was like, oh, I already gave her like her, so I was like, the problem I'm stuck in now, if I write a Medusa story into the Vicious Gods world, she's already gotten, without really agency, I would say, where I would want her to go, which is to have
Yes.
the ability to change between. But I would love to write that story because she is, I mean, and that's part of the reason I had to have Athena or
Mm-hmm.
Theo make amends, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
like so awful what they did to her. Um, and that's the thing about Greek mythology. It's like you think somebody's a villain, and then you're like, wow, they are a victim, and they have been a
Mm-hmm.
victim. So I do want to write a Medusa story, but I have to tell you, like, everybody wants an Emmett story. Everybody wants a Cecile story, and I'm like, okay, I have announced Light and Death. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I will get there. But it's funny. The great thing about this world, um, is that I do have the capacity and ability to like write as many of the God stories as I want. I also have friends who are like, can we please get Silas's story? And I was like, sure. Down the road. He was originally, funnily enough, that's fire. He was originally the main villain in Courting War.
Mm.
And I don't know if you've missed it or like a lot of people, I don't know if you miss it or I don't know. I don't know how readers take it, but he is part of the reason that Theo hates men. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, like I've always wanted to tell that story, but it was not, I tried to tell some of it in Courting War, but it was just like there was too much. There was too much happening. But yeah, anyway, long story short, I have no plans of not writing in this world for a long time. So
Yeah.
I right now I'm writing in the Gilded Wicked or Wicked Mirrors world and the Vicious Gods world um, for the next like couple years, and then we'll revisit where we're at then.
Well, that sounds amazing to me. I can't wait to see what else you put out, as far as your books and things like that. And thank you so much for taking time and staying late at work to use their Wi-Fi so that we can chat.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed chatting with you, and I'm sure
Well,
that we will talk soon.
thank you for asking me
You're
to chat with you.
welcome.
Mhm.
Absolutely. We'll talk soon, Hazel. Have a
Sure.
great rest of your night.
Bye.
Bye.